Hey guys, this will be video one for the how to design build a Honduran Mahogany hollow body flying V. And I have been wanting to do this series for so long, but this guitar was, the body was basically tabled about a year and a half ago because I was so busy building other guitars and, got caught up in the video series and all that jazz. But nonetheless, I just kind of left the camera off the last 2 weeks and just focused on getting this guitar body under control so that I could start doing the video series in tandem with the gold top sparkle flying V that I'm building as well. Uh, I'll go straight to the finish line and say I am going to sell this guitar, but probably not via eBay. This guitar, I'm going to contact Gruen Guitars in Nashville, as well as Carter Vintage, and I want to talk to them about what are they able to put on consignment, and without any sort of legal repercussions, because I don't put logos on my guitars, but because this is a flying V body, there might be some issues there. But nonetheless, this guitar is probably going to be going to Tennessee, and it's going to be going on consignment, and it'll have a price tag on it. So in other words, it's not going to be auctioned off. So let me reel myself in and try to keep this within about a 20-25 minute video, but we're going to get very technical in a little while about what is this in front of us, and then obviously what it's going to be once it's finished. So I'll do that. I'll just start off the top of my head and just go through the specs. And I'm going to start from the headstock down. I'm going to go with the traditional headstock design, the Flying V headstock design, but per my own specifications, they're considerably different from the traditional guitar. So it's going to be a 17-degree pitch headstock. Well, it already is. That's it. This is the neck right here. This is the rough out of the neck. And it's a one-piece Honduran mahogany. And the tap tones are basically off the charts. It's unbelievable. It's quarter sewn, perfectly quarter sewn in the actual neck itself. But once it comes down into the heel, it gets almost gets a little bit rift, but it's definitely quarter sewn. So it's a 17-degree pitch headstock Flying V. It'll have a doubled adjustable truss rod, adjustable at the headstock, and it will have it'll be cut for vintage tuners, like the Clouson type, and it will have the tuners as well. So everything about this guitar is going to be very much 1950s specifications. So just picture your typical 58, 59 Carina Flying V, and that's close. That's pretty close to what this guitar is going to be, because it will be a Bolivian rosewood quarter sewn fretboard, 12-inch radius, and it'll be a 1 in 23 32 inch nut. But I'm going to go a little bit thin. Well, not thin. I'm just not going to go with the real fat, chunky 50s profile neck. So it's going to feel kind of more like a 60s, a little bit faster neck. And again, a 12-inch radius, authentic 24.75-inch scale. I believe that's 628.65 millimeter. So it'll be an authentic 50s 24 3/4 inch scale. And I don't want to talk about the neck anymore, other than it'll be very close to the authentic design. Other than they would have been Carina. This is going to be Honduran mahogany. And then it's going to go into a very, very unique body that I designed probably about 17 years ago. It's funny, I used to always say, oh, about 10, 15 years ago, but now that I realize, man, I'm 55 years old, and I've forgotten that I've been building guitars pushing 25, 30 years now. So this design probably came around maybe 2008, 2006. It was somewhere in that range when I started putting it on paper. And the first one that I built, I finally built it about 3-4 years ago, and this is the actual first one. And it ended up being, it went to Texas, But and I'll cover this briefly because it is a hollow body guitar. This was the first one that I built hollow body, and it had your traditional, you know, humbuckers. But I put a Seymour Duncan little 59, the Junior 59, on a bit of a slant. It was a bridge pickup, so I had to slant it in order to line up across the E and the E. And I built this guitar as a stereo guitar. So this pickup ran as in its own place. This pickup and that pickup ran as a traditional flying V. I had a master volume and a master tone. Then I had a bridge volume and a middle volume. I'm not going to do that configuration anymore because it's so weird. Most people don't really understand it and that they don't like it. It's too much of a deviation from traditional. But because it is a hollow body guitar, you have to go in with this pretty substantial blocking up under your tailpiece stud locations as well as your bridge location. So but this guitar is considerably different. Once I pop the cap on this one, you'll see that it's much heavier, much beefier. But excuse me, but this guitar right here that I built was let me see if I can go off the top of my memory. I think the back was 3/8 of an inch, and the top was five. No, the top was 3/8 of an inch. The back was 3/16 of an inch thick. The sidewalls were about close to a half of an inch thick. It was a little bit thin, and it sounded amazing from an acoustic standpoint, but I think it lacked some substance in the wood. But nonetheless, it sounded unbelievable. It probably still does. But this guitar, the way I designed this one, it's you'll see this very much has a plate. We'll talk about the plate in a little while, but this is probably, and I'll go ahead and get the elephant out of there. This is probably one of the reasons why I tabled this guitar, because when I was roughing out this other guitar that I was building, I just didn't have enough wood. And it was so frustrating because I kept thinking, well, one of these days I'll get around to it. I'll do this, I'll do that. And I just never did. So I ended up doing some blocking in here, epoxied everything in, trimmed it up, leveled it, and did a veneer in here so that at least visually, if you were inspecting the guitar somehow or another, you wouldn't look down in and see a join. Okay. But nonetheless, tonally, it's no different. It's fine. And we do stuff like that in the marine industry all the time, the building boats and all that type jazz. And even building necks, you'll do scarf joints. But anyway, neither here nor there. It's definitely this one falls more along the lines of being like a chambered guitar, because and I'm going to digress a little bit and just, this is going to be very repetitive for you guys that have followed my series before, but I got to knock this out because for the most part, whomever comes to check out this video, they probably have never heard of any of the guitars that I've built, and or they've never heard me tell my story. So it started out in early 2002. I had a 1956 Gretsch Silverjet, an authentic, very, very early serial number of Silverjet. And I learned more about guitar building because I did a full restoration on that guitar. I bought it as a basket case, and it was really funny because I was living up in Franklin, Tennessee at the time. I was getting really serious about guitars, blah, 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 blah. I had been building jazz guitars per Robert Benedetto specs, and a lot of you guys are like, yeah, we've heard it, but where are the guitars? Well, the damn guitars are all over the world. And I'm not being arrogant, but I've built a lot of jazz guitars, and I'm much more proficient at building hollow body type guitars than I am at building like your Les Paul, slabs, or your other type guitars. But this design was always something that was in the back of my mind, and it started stemming from the fact when I restored my Silverjet. When I bought that Silverjet, I took it up to George Gruen himself at Gruen Guitars in Nashville, of course. And it was really comical because I was all excited about it. And I opened up the case, and you got the neck is up here and the body's down here, and it's all torn apart. And he just looked at me and he said, I hope you didn't pay very much for that. And it was kind of comical because I did. I paid a ton of money for that guitar, but nonetheless restored it and shipped it to Australia. And where I'm going with this is I learned how much wood you can remove from a solid body guitar and still get a phenomenal tone. And this design is almost hinting more at how would Gretsch in the 1950s have built a Flying V if they were going to chamber it, and it probably would have been something very similar to this right here. And I may title this video series as the rarest guitar in the world because I've never seen anybody do this ever, ever. And I've searched for it. I really have done a lot of searching, and no one has done this. And I've already, built the first one, and it sounds amazing. So, what is this really? What is this guitar? I'm going to say this is probably going to be more of a hybrid between let's talk about the Gibson line product line first to give credit where credit is due. This is going to be more along the lines of like a hybrid 335 and a Flying V. But because I've done so much Gretsch restoration and I've owned so many Gretsch guitars, vintage and like 90s and then the modern stuff as well, that it's also very much a Gretsch-esque idea from a design standpoint. Okay, so it's crazy, and it's funny. You might be thinking, why is that? Why did you go so thin right there? Because that's where this all this wood came out of a really large billet of wood, where that was the upper and the lower bout of a Les Paul, and that was the remnant wood from that drop. And then, so that's where I got to looking at thinking, man, it would be a shame to throw all this beautiful wood away when if you just spend a little bit of time and do some lamination and some build up, you'll end up with a hollow body guitar that'll be kind of a hollow body slash hybrid chambered guitar. And if you were to ask, like the Robert Benedettas of the world, or those type guys, is this a hollow body or is this a chambered guitar? They would probably define it more as being like a 95% chambered. Although, but keep in mind, this top plate does not make contact with the back. So it does resonate along the lines of a hollow body, whereas if it were a Gretsch, the Gretsch design had a really large block of wood right in the middle where they glued the top to the back. So it, in essence, was not, it really lost the ability to be called a hollow body. Like when I say hollow body, I'm thinking like the big body guitars. So I've gone off the rails a little bit and I've rambled, but I had to kind of tell the backstory about when I was building, jazz guitars per Robert Benedetto specs, and then I tripped up on the Silverjet, and I was up in Franklin, Tennessee at the time, and I was consulting with guys like Joe Glazer and Phil Jones at Phil Jones was at Gruen at the time, and I was consulting with a lot of really heavy hitters in the industry when I was beginning to restore and build. So it was really cool how, they took the time to talk to me first off. And then a lot of it just boils down to just getting in the shop, start building guitars. And again, what is this footprint? Oh, it's just a Flying V all day long, based on the exact specs of if you measure from here to here, or from here to here, or from here up to here. It's basically a 1950s Carina Flying V. However, as I've mentioned before, my shoulders are not nearly as square. My shoulders are a little bit more graceful, and I think actually far more attractive once you come in and do your heel. Whether if the heel came all the way down, the Flying V is so big, whether if you were to do the heel all the way down, or if you were to step it. So nonetheless, it's a Flying V per the 50 spec. And I better check the timer to make sure it's recording. Yeah, 15 minutes of rambling here, but nonetheless, it's for a worthy cause. All right, let's put that behind us. So you see my design, and what did it take to get here? An enormous amount of repetitive tracing and template work, and 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, just continually to the point where you get that tight fit right there. And it is as precise on the inside as it is out here once it glues up. And this is going to be a double bound guitar. It'll have binding on the back and binding on the front. And I haven't determined just yet, but there's a strong possibility I'm going to come in with a tortoise shell, because this Honduran is some of the most beautiful Honduran I've ever seen. It's very old. I've never seen anybody do the tortoise shell, but if you do a white binding under the tortoise shell, it just screams vintage. Well, you can see it back there, I hope. If not, I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste time talking about binding. I'd rather talk about this guitar. But nonetheless, because it's a built-up guitar, I would call that an engineered body, then you got to hide those sins. And that's a very old vintage poplar on the inside, Honduran cap, and we'll talk about that stuff in the future. And this is my extremely old late 1800s antique pine that I've been building all of my other Flying V's out of, and that's quarter sawn. And the tap tones are just off the charts, phenomenal. A lot of machine work here. You might be thinking, wow, it's kind of busy, kind of crazy. Well, it's a lot easier to machine all that stuff on the front end rather than trying to figure out how to get a DPD T switch in a cat in a top that is I think that was like 9/16 inch thick. It's very, very thick. Okay, so won't talk too much about I don't think so. No, we'll talk about the mahogany later on, but this mahogany is from a different tree from the back and from the front. But the back and the front, the chatoyancy is bar none positively insane, and it is from the same tree. It's from the same board I bought from Woodcraft Wood Supply Shop in Birmingham, Alabama, about years ago. It doesn't matter; it's irrelevant. But that's my design also, where that's actually a drop from, well, in other words, you rough it out so that wherever it cut out of, that gets put back in. We'll talk about that stuff in the future. But nonetheless, it's perfectly flush, perfectly precise, and is cut from the inside with a hole saw. I'll go ahead and discuss it briefly, because those are things that that it would be impossible to do after the fact. You come in with a hole saw and you remove the centering drill bit, and you clamp the body where you want it, and you hole saw through it from the inside. And then you have to go through like a 3-day process of aligning everything in order to start fitting all of the little tabs. So an enormous amount of time. An enormous amount of time and work, and we're having an electrical storm here, so the power may go out, but hopefully not. We'll see. All right, so anyway, we got to check the time again. 18 minutes. You got a hollow body Flying V, the rarest guitar in the world. There's only one more like it, and the other one that is like it is very much different from this one, because I kept this one very traditional. And let me go ahead and load it up, and I'll talk about excuse me, I haven't talked in a while, so my throat is kind of scratchy. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to load her up, and then I'll come back, and we'll talk about electronics and DPDTs and splitting pickups, parallel series, and all that fun stuff. So I'll be right back. Okay, let's see if we can pick up where I left off. The cool thing about I like the Seymour Duncan because I'm so familiar with it, but any 4-conductor pickup can be wired in what's called series split or parallel. I'm not going to go into that at all, because first off, I'm not qualified to even explain the difference, but I know what it sounds like. I do know that when you have a four conductor Seymour Duncan pickup, you're able to do the series split and parallel. And even like on this traditional 59 that is only a two wire, you know, the ground and the lead, you could go into this pickup internally and turn it into a four wire pickup. So, or you could just order it that way. But typically, your 59 Seymour Duncan comes with just, you know, the I guess the lead wire and the ground. But when you get into the world of splitting and parallel, splitting would be where you're you know, killing one of the coils. And I'm gonna stop because again, I'm not qualified to talk about it. But I just know that splitting is when you're only running one coil, and then if you're running them in series, well, then that's how the traditional pickup is designed to run. Like in other words, this pickup is running in series. But if you want to go into a state of oral bliss in a hollow body, run it in parallel, and it's where you're running both coils, but somehow or another they're running individually. It's really amazing, and it weakens the pickup, but it gives it a more clear, articulate, almost just like a more vintage sound. And it was very much distinguishable in the last hollow body Flying V that I built because I did do the series split and parallel on both of the pickups in that guitar, and then the pickup that was in the middle, I just ran it straight. Okay. So nonetheless, if you go with the Seymour Duncan, you know, and it's new, you'll be fortunate enough to get this right here, and it'll show you exactly how to wire your little double pole, double throw switch. And in other words, that's it right there. And you literally, even if you don't know what you're doing, you just connect the red wire at 3 o'clock and the black wire at 5 o'clock and the green wire at 7, and just, you know, use your alligator clip, and voila, you've turned a guitar that would only have three different tones without touching the tone knob, you know, uh, neck, middle, or neck, both, or bridge. Now you might run the neck in parallel, and then the bridge, you know, in series. You got a completely different tone between the two working in tandem when you're in the middle position. Or you might split the coil on the bridge to get more of like the real bright telly sound. Okay, so if you got a two humbucker guitar with a double pole double throw, which is called a DPDT switch, for that would be for the see, that switch would be for the neck, and then there would be a switch right here for the bridge. And then you literally have three different sounds that you can create out of each pickup, multiplied by whether you're running that one by itself, or the two of them in tandem, or the two of them down there. And I think the math adds up to being something like, I think it's exponential. I think there's 9 different sounds, if not 11 different sounds you can get out of the traditional configuration rather than just the three. And then factor in the fact that you can roll in, or roll off the tone. It's almost sheer limitless. And I got this configuration from a professional guitarist from the 90s that most everybody knows. His name is Dan Huff. And Dan is in Nashville now. I believe he's mostly a producer type, but he was able to achieve all of his unbelievable sounds on all the 80s and 90s recordings that we're talking chart toppers, just by having the ability to do all three. I don't think he did just series and parallel. I think he did, yeah, I'm almost certain he did series, parallel, split, and series on all of his pickups. He had three. He had a Strat, or he played a Strat. Check it out. It's a cool guitar. Dan Huff by Jake Tyler, maybe. I apologize if that's wrong. Maybe James Tyler. But a beautiful guitar. It's just typical Strat, but it's really tricked out with the electronics. And that's basically where this idea came from. I would be running this one as a neck volume, bridge volume, and then master tone. Okay, or if you wanted to, someone could run it as a master volume, master tone, and something else. And like I did in the last guitar, we put a kill switch right there. So I'm gonna stop talking about electronics because again, I'm not very good at electronics, but I can look at schematics enough, and I can find out what people are doing tone wise, and do like a treble bleed network and things like that on the master volume if it were a master volume. So there's ways that you can use the capacitors to really what's the word? What would be the word? Shape your tone, the color of your tone. So anyway, there you have it. I'm gonna stop talking because I don't know enough about electronics to really explain it. But nonetheless, this configuration, even though it's very similar to your traditional 50s design, it is my own. I'm a little bit. I brought everything in a little bit tighter, but then I opened up here to give you more room because if you got a DPD double pole, double throw switch, two of them right here, you got to make sure you don't crash into them. And whether you hook when you roll or you just roll like that, you're going to miss them. Okay. So really cool design, and it's my own. It's pretty much my own configuration. So let me check the time again. All right, 26 minutes. All right, let me see what I need to talk about. Let's do this because this is a long shaft. I'm going to pull it out so I can put this back together. Otherwise, it's a long frame. I mean, I said shaft. It's a long frame. And I am going to do my custom output jack right here. It'll be in a Telecaster socket. It'll be recessed down in there. That's my kind of my signature design now. I'm going to always stick to that on my design. So let's slip some pickups in there and see what it looks like. Cool thing about working with hollow bodies is you don't have those channels that you're dealing with, but this might be a little bit tricky because this, I'm just going to coil it up. That'll take any of the trickery out. Give you an idea of, I mean, it's basically just, just a flying V. Be pretty tough. Pretty tough guitar. Again, it'll have the, I do have it. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do the fretboard yet, but I do know that it's going to be the Brazilian rosewood. If there's ever an opportunity to do the custom block mother of pearl inlays, this would be it because it will be a double bound body. It's almost kind of like a flat top Les Paul because this is 2 inches exactly 2 inches thick. I didn't clarify that earlier, but this would be a great opportunity to come in, and keep in mind this body will get cut. This blower will get cut off at that line right there. That's the finished guitar. So that's also the 18th fret location. And that's pretty much the guitar right there. And I'm going to pitch this one at 1.5 degrees. It's going to be a real low profile, real low running profile guitar. And because even though it'll have the traditional Gibson ABR1 bridge with the ability to do the or it will have the hardtail studs, and I went ahead and got the extended ones. These are the massive, I think they're an inch thick, but this guitar, I'm definitely going to put the Bigsby on it, and I have an actual patent pending Vibramate. Very, very cool. That's a very rare item right there. So this baby will be pretty cool in that it'll be a very rare guitar, but it'll also be designed so that it can run the Bigsby, or you could run the traditional hardtail. Going as fast as I can here because I don't want this video to last too long. And I don't think there's anything else to talk about after this, but you can see the difference when you well, it's kind of sticking a little bit. You still got a lot of room. The cool thing about this is from the underside, you could come in with a little eyelet and another machine screw and do your ground wire that way if you wanted to, or you could just run the ground wire in there. But nonetheless, those will be obviously recessed all the way down into that's maple. I don't know if you saw that. This one is Honduran. The plate up here is Honduran mahogany to receive the studs. and the plate back there is hard maple. And both of those are epoxied in and glued in overnight. They'll be dried for 2 or 3 days before, if not 2 weeks before any of this gets machined and put in. And then that will allow you to run the B5 Bixby. And most likely, I'm going to keep my eye out for an authentic 60s vintage Bixby. And because I like running the vintage Bixbys, and then hang this baby on the shelf at either Gruen and or Carter Vintage, and let the paws come out or let the claws come out, because I think if there's ever a guitar that could eat a vintage Les Paul alive, or even a vintage Flying V, this guitar probably could do it. It's going to have a tonal palette that's just unprecedented, and because it'll warm up and you can play very much acoustic like, because it is the hollow body, or you can go full blown Ted Nugent, because I know most people don't know this, but Ted Nugent, or a lot of people don't know this, Ted Nugent plays hollow body, and that's how he got his screaming, growling, just insane, guitar work. Brian Setzer. There's a lot of guys out there that play the hollow body guitar and get a pretty mean rock and roll sound. So I imagine this one being the way it's designed, be a pretty incredible guitar. I don't think you could run it through a Marshall 100, but I don't think many of us are playing through amps like that anyway. Through a nice vintage Fender Tweed, wow, unbelievable. Be just unbelievable. And with the Bigsby, you're not limited at all. You could do jazz, you could do swing, you do bop, you do rockabilly, you do punk, you do everything, everything, everything. If you don't like the Bigsby, pull the Bigsby off, throw the hardtail on there, and she's back to traditional. So I'm going to check the time and probably just end the video right there. If it's still recording my audio, I'll just go through this briefly and mention that when you are building things like this, you need to really be working from templates. And then once you kind of get a configuration going, you start, locating little areas like that to really make certain that if you slipped up and you forgot something and you glued it together prematurely, at least you know where to find it later on. But the reason I say that is because I came very, very close to not drilling that in the back. I almost just left that in place, intact, left the back flat, solid, and just did all this wiring from the front like you would do a Gretsch. But I did that on the first one first, and it was so frustrating to have to pull the pickup and pull everything apart to work on it. So this is much, much more user friendly, and see if maybe it won't fall apart. You see how much more accessible everything is. Okay. All right. So, and this is probably the most critical template ever, because once you start doing your internal laminate work, you got to have some sort of template to work from, and that's where the hole saw. I started assessing just how tight or loose it was going to be. So after that, it all came together. So I'll end the video there. If it's still recording my audio, I won't be able to put a selector switch there, or a switch tip, but I'll put it right there and deceive the eye. Put it in the back. All right. I appreciate you guys checking in. Again, I may list this one on eBay, but very doubtful. It's probably going to end up in a pro shop, and we're going to see just how valuable it might be to someone. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video.